Hey everyone, Emily Carter here, and what I'm about to tell you isn't just another business relocation story. This is about the quiet dismantling of America's military-industrial backbone. Right now, as you're watching this video, some of the most critical defense contractors in the United States are packing up decades of operations in California and moving to states you'd never expect. We're talking about the companies that build our fighter jets, our missile defense systems, our naval vessels, the very hardware that keeps America's military the most powerful force on Earth. And they're leaving. Not because of market competition, not because of technological shifts, but because California has made it impossible for them to stay. Pentagon officials are watching this exodus with growing alarm. National security analysts are raising red flags. And the implications, they go far beyond corporate balance sheets. This is about America's ability to defend itself in an increasingly dangerous world. So buckle up, because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why the defense industrial base that won World War II and the Cold War is fracturing before our eyes. And what that means for every single American. Let's dive in. In the sprawling industrial complexes of Southern California, something unprecedented is happening. The defense contractors that have called this region home since the 1940s, the companies that built the aircraft that won wars, the missiles that kept adversaries at bay, the technology that put America decades ahead of its competitors, they're shutting down facilities, laying off specialized workers, and relocating critical manufacturing operations to other states. We're not talking about small satellite offices or administrative functions. These are core manufacturing plants, engineering centers, testing facilities, the actual places where America's most advanced weapons systems come to life. And here's what makes this different from normal corporate consolidation. It's accelerating at a pace that's catching even industry insiders off guard. Think about it for a second. These companies didn't build their operations in California by accident. They chose this state because of its aerospace heritage, its concentration of engineering talent from world-class universities, its proximity to military bases and testing ranges, its established supply chain ecosystem. When Lockheed built its famous Skunk Works in Palmdale, when Northrop set up shop in the Antelope Valley, when Boeing established massive facilities across Southern California, they were planting roots they expected to last generations. So when these same companies start moving operations to Texas, Alabama, Arizona, even North Carolina, something fundamental has shifted in the equation. The jobs that supported middle-class families for decades, the specialized workforce that took years to train, the supply chain vendors that depended on these anchor tenants, all of it is suddenly in J-Park. And the trigger? Let me show you exactly what sparked this defense industry migration. It wasn't one dramatic moment. It was a slow accumulation of pressure points that finally reached a breaking point. California's regulatory environment, already among the strictest in the nation, continued tightening. Environmental compliance requirements that added months to project timelines and millions to costs. Labor laws that made workforce management increasingly complex and expensive. Permitting processes that turned routine facility upgrades into multi-year odysseys through bureaucratic mazes. Then came the tax burden. California maintains some of the highest corporate tax rates in America, combined with property taxes on expensive real estate and a cost structure that makes every aspect of operations more expensive than competitor states. For companies operating on Pentagon contracts with fixed pricing and tight margins, these costs aren't abstract, they're existential. But here's what really changed the calculation: the talent exodus. For years, defense contractors could justify California's higher costs because of access to unmatched engineering talent. Graduates from Caltech, Stanford, USC, UCLA, schools that produce the aerospace engineers and software developers who designed America's most advanced systems. But something shifted in the past 5 years. Those same talented engineers started looking at California's cost of living, the $1 million median home prices, the traffic, the taxes, and they started asking themselves a simple question. Why stay? A senior aerospace engineer making $150,000 annually in California might take home less after taxes and housing costs than a colleague making $120,000 in Texas or Florida with no state income tax and affordable housing. The math became impossible to ignore. Defense contractors started reporting something alarming in internal workforce surveys. Their best people were leaving California voluntarily, moving to lower-cost states and either working remotely or finding new jobs with competitors who had already relocated. When your most specialized talent, the people with security clearances and decades of experience on classified programs, when they start voting with their feet, you have to follow them or lose them entirely. And that's exactly what happened. Corporate executives in boardrooms across Southern California started running the numbers, and what they found was stunning. By relocating major operations to states like Texas, Arizona, or Alabama, they could reduce operating costs by 25 to 35%. Not through efficiency improvements or technological innovation, but simply by changing their zip code. For a major defense program worth billions over its life cycle, that's hundreds of millions in savings or additional profit. Now let's talk about what this really means for national security. Because this isn't just about corporate profits or state tax revenue. This is about America's ability to design, build, and maintain the weapons systems that defend this nation. The defense industrial base, that's the term Pentagon planners use, it's not just a collection of companies. It's an ecosystem. You need the prime contractors, the big names like Lockheed, Northrop, Boeing, Raytheon. But you also need the thousands of specialized suppliers and subcontractors who provide everything from advanced composites to precision machining to software integration. These supply chains took decades to build. They're based on relationships, proximity, specialized expertise that exists in specific places because of historical accident and accumulated investment. When a major prime contractor leaves California, it doesn't just move itself. It destabilizes an entire network. Smaller suppliers face a choice. Follow your major customer to another state, try to serve them remotely with higher logistics costs, or find new customers in a shrinking California defense market. Many of these smaller firms don't have the resources to relocate. They're family-owned machine shops, specialized materials suppliers, testing facilities with equipment that can't easily move. When they close, that capability doesn't just relocate, it vanishes. And here's the part that keeps Pentagon acquisition officials up at night. Some of this capability is irreplaceable. There might be only 2 or 3 companies in the entire country who can manufacture a specific component to the tolerances required for a missile guidance system or a fighter jet engine. If one of those companies goes under because their primary customer relocated and they couldn't follow, you've just created a single point of failure in America's defense supply chain. Let me give you a concrete example of how this plays out. Northrop Grumman's B-21 Raider, America's next-generation stealth bomber, one of the most advanced aircraft ever designed, is being built in Palmdale, California, at the legendary Plant 42. But Northrop has been steadily moving other operations out of California to facilities in Alabama, Florida, and other states. The B-21 program requires thousands of specialized components from hundreds of suppliers. Many of those suppliers were historically located in Southern California, close to the final assembly plant. As Northrop shifts its center of gravity away from California, those suppliers face difficult choices. The ones who can't or won't relocate may lose those contracts to suppliers in states where Northrop is expanding. Over time, the supply chain fragments. Communication becomes harder. Integration challenges multiply. Quality control becomes more complex when you're coordinating across multiple states instead of within a concentrated regional ecosystem. Pentagon officials have been remarkably candid in closed-door briefings about their concerns. They're watching the concentration of defense manufacturing shift from California, where it's been centered since World War II, to a more distributed model across multiple states. On paper, that might sound like good risk management. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. But in practice, it's creating coordination challenges and potential vulnerabilities that didn't exist before. And here's the kicker. America's adversaries are watching this too. Chinese military analysts study U.S. defense industrial capacity obsessively. They know that America's ability to surge production in a crisis, to rapidly build more missiles, more aircraft, more ships, depends on an intact industrial base with skilled workers and functioning supply chains. When that base fractures, when specialized facilities close, when experienced workers retire and aren't replaced, you're not just losing current capacity. You're losing the ability to scale up when you need it most. Now let's talk about the states that are winning this competition. Because while California hemorrhages defense contractors, other states are rolling out the red carpet with incentives that make relocation irresistible. Texas has been perhaps the most aggressive. When Lockheed Martin decided to relocate significant portions of its operations, Texas offered massive tax incentives, infrastructure improvements, streamlined permitting, and direct support for workforce training programs. The message was clear: we want your business, we'll make it easy, and we'll make it profitable. Alabama has pursued a similar strategy, successfully attracting major expansions from Boeing, Lockheed, and Northrop. The state invested heavily in workforce development programs, partnering with community colleges and universities to create pipelines of trained workers specifically for aerospace and defense manufacturing. Arizona leveraged its existing aerospace presence and favorable business climate to attract additional defense contracts and facilities. Florida positioned itself as the natural home for space and missile defense operations, building on its heritage with Cape Canaveral and Patrick Space Force Base. These states understand something California seems to have forgotten. Defense contractors are valuable assets. They bring high-paying jobs. They attract educated workers. They create multiplier effects throughout the local economy. Every engineer hired by a defense contractor supports additional jobs in housing, retail, services, education. The economic impact ripples outward. And these states are competing aggressively because they recognize the strategic value of hosting defense industrial capacity. But here's where it gets really interesting from a political standpoint. This exodus is creating a geographic realignment of political power tied to defense spending. California has been losing defense contracts and facilities for 2 decades, but the pace has accelerated dramatically in the past 5 years. As defense manufacturing moves to red and purple states, those states gain political leverage. Their congressional delegations can credibly threaten to block major defense programs if funding doesn't flow to facilities in their states. Meanwhile, California's congressional delegation, once dominant in defense appropriations, finds itself with less leverage because the facilities and jobs are no longer in their districts. This creates a feedback loop. Less defense presence in California means less political power to attract future contracts, which leads to more companies leaving, which further reduces political influence. It's a death spiral for California's defense industrial base, and the implications go beyond just economics. Defense policy itself starts to shift when the political coalition supporting it changes. Representatives from states hosting major defense operations become natural advocates for robust defense spending. They see the jobs in their districts, the workers who depend on those contracts, the companies that support their local economies. California's delegation, increasingly focused on other priorities like technology regulation, climate policy, and social programs, becomes less reliably supportive of defense budgets. Now, let me show you the numbers that should alarm every American. The Department of Defense spends roughly $750 billion annually. That's $750 billion buying everything from aircraft carriers to rifle ammunition. California used to capture approximately 15 to 18% of that total spending, making it the largest defense contracting state in the nation. But that percentage has been declining steadily. Recent estimates suggest California's share has dropped to around 12 to 13% and falling. That represents tens of billions in lost economic activity. Texas, by contrast, has seen its share grow from around 8% to nearly 11%. Arizona, Alabama, and Florida have all increased their shares as well. This isn't just money moving around. This represents real manufacturing capacity, real jobs, real capability shifting from one part of the country to another. And here's what really matters from a strategic perspective. When you lose manufacturing capacity, you can't just turn it back on like a light switch if you need it. Modern defense manufacturing requires specialized facilities, trained workers, established supply chains, validated processes. If a crisis emerges, if America suddenly needs to produce weapons at wartime rates, the capacity to do that has to exist before the crisis hits. During World War II, America's industrial might turned the tide of the war. Factories that made cars started making tanks. Shipyards that built merchant vessels started building warships. That surge capacity came from having a robust domestic industrial base that could be rapidly converted and expanded. Today's defense manufacturing is far more specialized. You can't convert a car factory to build stealth fighters. The skills, the equipment, the supply chains, they're not interchangeable. So, when defense manufacturing capacity leaves California and fragments across multiple states, you're not just relocating existing capacity. You're potentially reducing America's ability to surge production when it matters most. Let's talk about the workforce implications because this is where the human cost becomes real. California's aerospace and defense sector employed hundreds of thousands of workers, many of them in specialized roles that took years or decades to master. Aerospace engineers, software developers with security clearances, precision machinists, quality control specialists, program managers who understood the complex world of defense contracting. When a major facility closes or relocates, those workers face impossible choices. Follow the job to another state, uproot your family, leave your community, sell your house in a challenging market. Or stay in California and try to find comparable work in a shrinking industry. For workers early in their careers, relocation might be feasible. But for workers in their 40s, 50s, or 60s, with kids in school, aging parents, mortgages, community ties, the choice is agonizing. And here's the tragedy. When experienced workers choose not to relocate, that expertise is lost. A senior engineer with 30 years of experience on classified programs, institutional knowledge that exists nowhere else, retires early or shifts to a different industry. That knowledge walks out the door and never comes back. The companies relocating to other states try to rebuild that expertise, hiring new engineers, training them, getting them security clearances. But it takes years, sometimes a decade or more, to develop the kind of deep expertise that California's workforce had accumulated over generations. Meanwhile, the younger generation is watching this unfold and drawing conclusions. Why study aerospace engineering if the jobs are leaving the state? Why pursue a career in defense if the industry is contracting in your region? California's universities still produce world-class engineering talent, but increasingly that talent is looking at opportunities in commercial tech, not defense. The pipeline is drying up. Now let's talk about what California has done in response. Because you'd think watching tens of billions in defense contracts and tens of thousands of high-paying jobs leave the state would trigger some kind of policy response, right? Well, here's the uncomfortable truth. California's political leadership has been largely indifferent. The state's dominant political coalition is focused on climate change, housing affordability, homelessness, social justice initiatives, all important issues. But defense manufacturing barely registers as a priority. When defense contractors approached state officials about the challenges they were facing, the regulatory burdens, the costs, the workforce issues, the response was essentially adapt or leave, and so they left. There were some half-hearted attempts at retention. Small tax incentives here, streamlined permitting for specific projects there, but nothing remotely comparable to the comprehensive packages that Texas, Alabama, and Arizona were offering. California's attitude seemed to be, we're the fifth largest economy in the world, we have Silicon Valley, we have Hollywood, we have agriculture, we'll be fine without defense manufacturing. And maybe they're right in pure economic terms. The state's economy is large and diversified enough to absorb the loss of defense contracts without collapsing. But this isn't just about economics. This is about national security. This is about America's ability to defend itself. And that responsibility doesn't rest solely with California, but when the state that historically anchored America's defense industrial base decides it's no longer interested in that role, we have a problem. Here's what keeps me up at night. The fragmentation of America's defense industrial base is happening at exactly the moment when global threats are intensifying. China is rapidly modernizing its military, building advanced fighters, hypersonic missiles, aircraft carriers, all designed specifically to challenge American military superiority. Russia, despite its struggles in Ukraine, remains a nuclear power with advanced weapons systems. Iran, North Korea, non-state actors with access to increasingly sophisticated technology, the threat environment is more complex and dangerous than at any time since the Cold War. And America's response, our ability to maintain technological superiority, to outproduce adversaries, to rapidly adapt to new threats, depends entirely on having a robust defense industrial base. When that base fractures, when supply chains break, when expertise is lost, when facilities close, you're not just losing current capability, you're losing future options. Let me paint you 3 scenarios for how this could play out over the next decade. First, the optimistic scenario. The defense contractors who relocated successfully rebuild their operations in new states. The workforce adjusts, new talent pipelines develop, supply chains reconstitute themselves in different geographic configurations. The Pentagon adapts its acquisition processes to work with a more distributed industrial base. America maintains its technological edge and production capacity, just in different locations. California's loss is other states' gain, but national capability remains intact. That's the best case, and it's possible. Second scenario, the degradation scenario. The relocation process is messier than anticipated. Some critical suppliers don't make the transition. Specialized capabilities are lost. The workforce brain drain from California isn't fully replaced in new locations. Program delays multiply as companies struggle with the logistics of operating in unfamiliar states with new supply chains. Costs rise. Quality issues emerge. The Pentagon starts seeing the impacts in delayed deliveries, cost overruns, and performance problems. America's technological edge begins to erode, not dramatically, but steadily. Adversaries notice and become bolder. That's the concerning middle scenario. Third scenario, the crisis scenario. A major conflict erupts, Taiwan, Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and America needs to rapidly surge defense production. And that's when we discover that the fragmented industrial base can't scale up the way the old concentrated ecosystem could. Supply chain bottlenecks appear. Critical facilities that closed in California can't be reconstituted. The skilled workforce needed to ramp up production doesn't exist because we didn't maintain it during peacetime. America finds itself unable to outproduce adversaries the way it has in every major conflict since World War II. That's the nightmare scenario that Pentagon war planners are quietly preparing for. So here we are, California's defense industrial base, built over 80 years, anchored by legendary companies and world-class talent, is fragmenting in real time. The contractors are leaving, the jobs are vanishing, the supply chains are breaking, and America's ability to defend itself in an increasingly dangerous world hangs in the balance. This isn't hyperbole. This is the reality that national security professionals are grappling with right now. The decisions being made in corporate boardrooms and state capitals today will determine America's military capability a decade from now. And the window to reverse this trajectory is closing fast. What's the path forward? How do we prevent the worst-case scenarios and ensure America maintains the defense industrial capacity it needs? First, California needs a wake-up call. State leadership must recognize that defense manufacturing isn't just another industry that can be allowed to wither. It's a strategic national asset. That means meaningful policy changes, regulatory reform to reduce compliance burdens, tax incentives competitive with other states, workforce development programs to rebuild talent pipelines, infrastructure investments to support defense manufacturing. It can't be symbolic gestures. It has to be comprehensive reform that signals to defense contractors, California wants you to stay and succeed. Second, the federal government needs to step up. The Pentagon can't just passively watch this exodus unfold. Defense acquisition policies should incentivize maintaining robust industrial capacity in multiple regions, including California. That might mean contracting preferences, direct investment in critical facilities, or requirements that prime contractors maintain diverse geographic footprints. The Defense Production Act gives the federal government tools to shape industrial policy when national security requires it. Those tools should be on the table. Third, the defense contractors themselves need to think beyond quarterly earnings. Yes, relocating to lower-cost states improves profit margins in the short term, but fragmenting the industrial base creates long-term risks for everyone. Industry leaders should be working together and with government to develop strategies that maintain critical capabilities while managing costs. That might mean industry consortiums, shared facilities, or innovative approaches to workforce development that spread beyond single companies. Fourth, and this is crucial, we need a national conversation about what kind of defense industrial base America needs for the 21st century. The old model, concentrated in a few regions with deep legacy expertise, is breaking down. The new model, distributed across multiple states with varying capabilities, is still taking shape. We need strategic thinking about what capabilities must be maintained, where redundancy is valuable, and how to ensure surge capacity exists when we need it. This isn't happening right now. It needs to start immediately. So there you have it. The defense contractor exodus from California, a crisis unfolding in slow motion with implications that reach far beyond state borders or corporate balance sheets. This is about America's ability to defend itself, to maintain the military superiority that has underpinned global stability for 80 years, to respond to threats we can see and threats we haven't imagined yet. The fragmentation of our defense industrial base is a strategic vulnerability that adversaries will exploit if we let it continue unchecked. Every week brings new relocation announcements, new facility closures, new jobs lost. The trajectory is clear, and it's deeply concerning. But here's why this matters to you, whether you work in defense or not, whether you live in California or not. The strength of America's military depends on the health of our defense industrial base. When that base fractures, when capability is lost, when we can't build the weapons we need quickly enough or advanced enough, every American becomes less safe. This isn't abstract. This is about the security of this nation in an increasingly dangerous world. So I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you think California can reverse this exodus? Should the federal government intervene to protect critical defense industrial capacity? If you were making policy decisions, what would you do differently? Drop your thoughts below. I read every comment and I will respond. And if this video opened your eyes to what's really happening with America's defense industrial base, hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to understand these stakes. And subscribe to Emily Carter for more deep dives into the strategic issues that actually matter. Because America's ability to defend itself is being reshaped right now, and most people have no idea it's even happening. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Stay informed, stay engaged, and never stop questioning.